Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome to Haveringland. I'm sorry we couldn't arrange wall-to-wall sunshine for you. It was like that a few weeks ago, I promise. But we have the cold snap just like everybody. Several years ago, in the process of formulating a funding bid to the National Lottery Heritage Fund, we had a silly idea. We thought, wouldn't it be good if we could draw lots of people to this church in a field in the middle of nowhere to share our experiences of the process of the project that we've done here, of how we are working towards becoming a sustainable rural church. Several years later, here we are. Well done for finding us. You're welcome to our day conference for people who care about rural churches. And we hope we can provide a space here today where you can be honest about your frustrations and your anxieties. We also hope it will be a space where you can share your stories and hear the stories of others, to give and receive encouragement, and hopefully to walk away with just a little bit of inspiration to take back to your parishes or your situations. Thank you so much for coming today. We've been ever so slightly bowled over by the thought that 100 people would want to come and be part of this day. So we're very, very grateful to have you with us. Now, Nigel. Nigel, I should have introduced myself. You don't all know me. I'm Andrew Whitehead. I'm the team vicar with responsibility for Haveringland and 8 other churches as part of the Aylsham and District team. And this is Nigel. Nigel was our church warden and has project managed this wonderful project in the church. I wondered if we might do some practicalities first and then we'll get on to our questions. What did you want to talk about? Exits and toilets, or do you want me to do that?
Oh, yes, you can do that, I think. You know,
I'll do that. I get all the glamorous jobs. So, at the risk of sounding like a flight attendant, there are 2 doors in and out of the church, here and here. The door on this side is the one which we would prefer you to use unless there is a case of a drastic emergency and that door is blocked, at which point you may use the other door, but that's really not a functional exit apart from emergencies. Toilet facilities are here at the front of the church, cunningly disguised behind some ancient panelling. Please do use them. If that one's busy and if you are in need, there are 2 portaloos behind the marquee, and there is a further one at the end of the churchyard. So we hope we've got enough facilities for everybody. On your way in, you should have received a name badge. Apologies to those who were overlooked, but most of you have a name badge. Please do wear it, obviously, so we know who we're talking to. You should also have received one of these, a personalised card which tells you what you've booked. We're not going to take a register in the panel session, so if you think you like the look of something else more, then feel free to flex. But that's what you've booked, so it should tell you where you're meant to be and when you're meant to be there. If you see people wearing lanyards, that pretty much means they're part of the home team. So if you have a question, especially a practical question, then do find somebody with a lanyard and they will do their very best to answer it for you. Now, the talks and the panel discussions today are being recorded. We have a built-in live streaming system in this church, which is running as we speak. And all the talks in the church will be going onto YouTube retrospectively. Also, we have recordings happening in the tent as well. So if you're squeamish about being on YouTube, then in the church you have pillars behind which you may hide. But it's an important part of the day that we spread the knowledge wider than just this 100 wonderful people here in the church and get it out onto the internet. So we hope you'll go with us on that. The other way we're recording today's event is with the help of my good friend Andy Gray and his son Reuben, who will be graphically recording the proceedings. So as our speakers speak and our panels discuss, you will see images and words appear on this board at the front. We're going to be able to use those images after the event to continue sharing the good news about what we've done here. And we're also encouraging you to come and take pictures through the day and share them on social media, of the event generally, but of Andy's work too. We'd like to make a splash, so please do share it far and wide. There are sound systems in both the church building and in the marquee. If you're on a panel, then please be disciplined and use the microphone so that everybody can hear you. That's the sound that will go into the YouTube recording. So even if you feel you've got a loud voice and you want to do it without a microphone, please don't. Please use the microphone, because then it will be captured for the recording. And likewise, when you ask questions in the panel discussions or to our keynote speakers, please wait until the microphone lands in front of you before you start your question. And I feel a visual aid is required. As a person who's a techie and into sound systems, I get to share with you my pet peeve. If you receive a microphone to speak into, please don't hold it like this or like this. Please hold it like this, and then it will work. Thank you. You'll make me very happy. The final practicality I wanted to share with you, and this will come out through the day in our discussions about sustainability, is that this is a church whose finances are, I suppose, tenuous is the best word for them. As a festival church, we only have 6 acts of worship a year. We don't have large congregations who come regularly and feel the need to give to us. And so we run a very tight budget. If you are able, and if you are minded, we would encourage you to leave a donation for the work of the church before you leave today. And you can do that with the contactless terminal at the back, and there is also a place for cash donations. So I thought I'd get that in so the treasurer will be happy. Now, I'm going to invite Nigel back, and we're just going to spend a few minutes setting the scene and explaining how we've got to this point. A few words of context and explanation. So, Nigel, the project that this conference represents the end of started back in 2016 in some ways. What was the church like back in 2016, and how was it used or not?
Well, the building was in a pretty poor state of repair. The drainage wasn't working, we had water coming down the walls, windows were broken. The usual story, I'm sure many of you will appreciate. In terms of its use, it was very infrequent. I think we had services perhaps once a month, and people attending could be counted on one hand, really, very few people. So it was in a pretty poor state, and we needed to do something.
And then we did something. And how did that something take shape? Because, I mean, there'll be people here who are in a situation where they've got a quinquennial report which tells them they've got £100,000 worth of work to do, and they just don't know where on earth to start. How did you start? How did we start here in Haveringland?
Well, we got together with a small group of local people and formed what was called a church action group. And we started to formulate a plan which involved a number of things. Firstly, I think experimenting with different forms of service, which was very exciting. Harvest festivals with tractor rides, pet services, services to do with the star at Christmas and things like this. And they proved reasonably popular, I think. But we realised that if we wanted to really make a big change, we needed money. And so we started to formulate plans about the urgent repairs that were needed, but also to think about the improvements we needed to make the church, because we are a church in a very small parish. I think it's a couple of hundred souls, and there is no community centre or village hall. So we developed the idea of developing this not just as a festival church, 6 services a year, but as a community hub as well, something that would serve other needs in the immediate and perhaps surrounding communities as well. And that's how the plan began. And I think we started to put together sort of funding bids, many and several, not very big, but they gathered momentum. And I think that was very important. One led to another. So we started to build up a sort of critical mass of funding, and I think ideas and interest that led us on to really the big next stage.
And the next stage involved our friends at the National Lottery Heritage Fund, which lots of people will be familiar with. How was the journey in getting lottery funding? He says, knowing the answer.
Frustrating actually, was the word that comes to mind. We put together, I thought, a reasonably sound bid, and we had some very good feedback from colleagues at the Lottery Fund. But unfortunately, there was a lot of competition, and so we were turned down first time round. This was for a bid for just under £250,000. Not to be put off, we put together another bid, and that was rejected as well, but on different grounds. We were rejected on those grounds of there were too many improvements, not enough repairs and improvements to the, if you like, the heritage aspects of the building. But we weren't accepted that. We challenged it, and we thought, well, look, we weren't advised this first time round. What went wrong? So we got some very helpful advice from colleagues at the Heritage Fund, and that led us on to our third time lucky. And at the end of 2022, we were awarded just under £250,000 to bring about not just repairs, but also some of those improvements that we'll talk about a bit more in a moment.
And so the emphasis of our lottery bid became very much about repairs and restoration, but we still had an ambition to provide a toilet and kitchen facilities and a live streaming system, a new lighting scheme, and all these things. How did that unfold at phase 2, as it became known?
Yeah, I mean, that was the next frustrating stage, because we had estimates of the costs of all the building works, etc., that we wanted to do. Went out to tender. The cheapest tender came back almost double what the estimates were. I think it was partly to do with timing, Ukraine war and all this sort of thing, perhaps. So we thought, what could we do? We went back to the lottery, we had some further discussions, and we basically amended our plans. We sort of reduced the overall cost by about £80,000. Lottery were very kind and gave us an additional £80,000. And we took out some of the key improvements, so the servery, the toilet, the heating. And we developed what we called a Part 2 project and tried to apply for funding to achieve that. And I'm very pleased to say we managed to raise, I think, something like £120,000 in total over a year or so to achieve, if you like, the big picture, not just the repairs and improvement, not just the repairs, but also these key improvements.
And very cleverly, I might add, Part 2 was delivered at the same time as Part 1 by the same contractor. So to the world, it looked like one project, but in terms of funding streams, it was slightly separate.
Exactly. Yeah.
So works finished around the end of 2024, which is quite a long time ago now. What's been happening since then, Nigel?
Well, we had a very, very grand reopening service just before Christmas in 2024. And we were also very fortunate in securing funding from Norfolk Community Foundation in a fund that was called the wonderful title, Countering Loneliness Innovation Fund. We applied to this. This was money that was given by a private donor. I think £90,000 in total was available. We managed to secure about £12,000 to basically underwrite the costs of a programme of activities and events that would bring people together, and it's called Only Connect. Apologies to the BBC Two lovers. And so over the last year, we've been piloting this programme of activities and events, very wide-ranging. In fact, you can see more over lunchtime on a rolling screen over here, and come and talk to me about them if you want to. But we've piloted a whole range of things. We have small groups of people interested in particular activities, knitting, crafts, singing, whatever it might be. We've had a number of experimental performances, musical performances. We've had a number of talks, some on heritage-related topics, others more to do with health and well-being. And it's brought people together. And it is a start. I think the numbers have not been huge. We've had between, I suppose, a dozen up to about 50 people, depending on the things we've done. But I think what's been very interesting is that we've been serving a community wider than the immediate parish. We've reached out to surrounding areas, and we've also reached out to what we've called communities of interest. So individuals that perhaps have an interest in the association of the church with the former RAF Swannington, for example, the RAF connections, historical connections, and other groups that come here for other reasons. They're interested in the church, they perhaps got relatives buried in the churchyard. And it's also been very important that the church is now open, because until we did the improvements, it was closed every day apart from services. And I think, my wife will correct me if I'm wrong, but last year I think we had something like 250 registers in the visitors book. And I think it's fair to say many of those left donations. So that was a real plus. I think we've had informal visits as well as more formal events and activities as well. But it's early days, and I think we're now pressing on and learning from that experience and developing the programme as we go.
And I suppose that leads me on to the challenges around the project. You've talked about some of the challenges in gaining the funding in the first place. What are the challenges that you foresee as we look forwards into the future for Haveringland?
Well, in some senses, they're the challenges, I suppose, that we've experienced over the last year. Things like demographic change. We live in an area which has a population that's primarily elderly. Many people perhaps don't like going out. We've still got perhaps the experience of COVID that has been important for many people, made them a bit more reluctant to meet up with people. And we've got screen time, people sitting at home in front of screens and not going out and socialising. Those have been, I think, the challenges that we face in a particularly, I think, a rural community, and which will continue to, I think, be challenges. And I think the other thing that links in with that is the challenges that we have as a church and community hub in finding the people, i.e. having the capacity to run things. Again, that will be very familiar to many of you, I'm sure. That is a continuing challenge, but I think, again, we've started to pick up interest from local people, and our hope is that, a bit like I said with momentum, with the funding, this will gradually gain momentum and will gradually increase the numbers and generate funds and make the thing viable.
Great. Thank you, Nigel.
Thank you.
Nigel is around all day and is a mine of information, so I expect there'll be a queue for Nigel at lunchtime. Please do make use of us and ask us about the experience here. Nigel mentioned just briefly there something which you may not know if you've not been to Haveringland before and you don't know the area, but this church sits on the edge of the former RAF Swannington, which was the last airbase to be opened in the Second World War and the first one to be closed. It only had a very short lifespan, and there's a picture at the back which shows a Mosquito aircraft just parked up just over here. You'll have driven down the perimeter track to the old airfield. So heritage is a very important part of what this building is about, and do ask us more as the day goes on if you want to find out some more information.